And now, once more with feeling. Hello everyone, welcome to day 2 of Pro Tour Gatecrash here in Montreal. Rich Hagan, Zach Hill, my hair's all lovely now. I'm sure you're delighted about that.
Really.
Zach, what's in store over the next 12 hours or so of live magic?
That's like we were talking about, we've got 3 rounds of draft. We're going to actually cover the entire draft for you. And then, of course, 5 more rounds of standard. A bit different order from the way we're used to things. Usually limited will come at the end of the first day, but we've shifted it up, and it's been a lot of fun to watch.
It really has. One of the interesting things that came out of yesterday is players who didn't necessarily do well in draft, maybe they were 1 and 2 after 3 rounds, kind of got buried in the avalanche. 400 players, of course, you can't keep track of everyone.
Of course.
And so teasing out people like Dylan Brown of Australia, who went 5-0 in standard with his Blue Man Reanimator deck. So there's lots of interesting standard decks out there, none more so though, Zach, than the lady who's topping the standings right now, Melissa DeTora of Team TCGplayer.com.
Right, so Melissa's playing a Bance deck, a lot like the one we saw Reed Duke do very well on the Grand Prix circuit with. A lot of just mid-range creatures, blue, green, white cards, Thragtusk, Restoration Angels, but splashing red this time because of Sacred Foundry and Stomping Grounds for Kessig Wolfrun. This is a deck that likes to tap out every turn for Sphinx's Revelation if it can. Sometimes you don't have a Revelation, so you have to content yourself with attacking for 15 points of damage.
Well, you're going to see by the nature of draft pods on day 2, the top of the standings going against each other. So we're going to take a look at, if you like, our virtual top 8. If the tournament stopped now, who would be there? Of course, Melissa DeTora leads the way. 24 points, 8-0. She has 3 losses to give. It's the 4th loss you want to watch out for. That's where it puts you right on the boundary of maybe needing tie-break help, maybe needing, you're going to finish 10th, 11th, 9th, somewhere around there. So you don't want that 4th loss. Melissa, big 0 losses so far. Now, great story in 2nd place, Zach. Timothée Simoneau of France. Not someone people knew a lot about until a week ago when he wins GP London.
Right, and that's actually a phenomenon we've seen a lot, especially recently with Grand Prix so close to the Pro Tour. People are able to pick up momentum, and it really is a thing. And we've seen a lot of people, win a Grand Prix or top 8, only to dominate the standings the very next weekend.
And Simoneau is part of that group of French players that includes Grand Prix winner Jeremy Desarnais, Louis Deltour, Pierre Dajon. The 4 of them really close-knit and really paying dividends there. Now, number 3, again, another great story. This is Paul Rini of Chinese Taipei. And you're thinking, well, I know the name, but I don't necessarily know the face. Why not?
Well, the thing about Paul Rennie was, the Chinese Taipei team actually won the World Magic Cup. Rennie, though, was the alternate on the later days of play. He was the one player eliminated from the early, from the first day of contention. We've seen him in that video that's been making the rounds on the internet, reacting.
He's the coach.
Yeah, right. He was the coach of the team.
Now, Eric Froelich made the most of his opportunity yesterday. In round 1, I'm watching, and he's just wandering around the hall after like 5 minutes. I'm like, what happened to you? Is your deck that quick? He said, well, my deck is quite quick. But no, bye. He was at a table of 7. He was the odd one out, got a bye, and boy, did he ever deliver. He ended up 7-1 overnight, including a pretty crunchy match against Owen Turtenwald in the last round for who would go to 7-1 and who would get sent home with a loss at 6-2. Talking, then we get to Becerra. So this is Felipe Tapia Becerra. I think that's pretty close, actually. And he is from Chile, won PTQ in San Diego. Zach, what do you know about Isaac Egan from Australia? What do you know about him?
I know he's he top-aided Grand Prix Sydney in 2010. We actually, it's funny, there's a lot of Australian Grand Prix that kind of paved the way for a lot of players that people don't know a whole lot about, but they show up at the Pro Tour and do quite well. There's kind of a long history of those GPs.
Okay, rounding out the top 8 right now, Ben Stark and Don van Ravensvaart of the Netherlands. We're going to see them in action. It is time to get down for the draft of day 2. Let's hand you over to the booth.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the booth. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. This is Brian David Marshall.
Morning.
We're going to be watching some draft. Now, this is something that you and I could do all day, all night, next day, tomorrow, stay here for the rest of our lives doing this. Yeah. So I know I'm excited to see some Gatecrash.
What did we do yesterday? We watched 8 rounds of Magic.
Yes.
We had like a recap meeting where we talked about Magic. We went back to the hotel.
were we drafting?
Yeah, we were drafted.
Yeah, and I'm pretty stoked because we've seen at least a few of the sort of sub-archetypes start to emerge from Gatecrash. Now, we know that there's these guilds. They put you in a specific type of a deck.
We're going to go to the floor, it looks like, and actually watch this draft.
All right, so let's go right now.
Pick up your pack. You have 35 seconds.
All right, so it looks like we're looking at Melissa DeTora here, and she picked a King's Pin pet for her first card, and she's looking at her second pick right now, and she's carefully thumbing through here. We see she's got a Cartel Aristocrat pulled to the front. There's also a Court Street Denizen that I noticed in the pack. It looks like she wants that Aristocrat, though.
There's also a Confessor, I believe, which is another.
Well,
Draft?
she picked off camera,
The
but
pack's
we'll get a
should be
spot
12
on
cards.
what she actually took there once we can.
Pick up your pack. You have 30 seconds.
All right, she's thumbing through her next.
She did take the Cartel Aristocrat. Wow, there's not really.
There is not a lot here. We see an Orzhov Key Rune, which isn't a particularly strong card unless you're in the exact right deck for it. There's a Slate Street Ruffian, which is just a 2/2 for 3. She's also got
5 seconds.
what is she? She's pulled the Key Rune to the front, though.
Draft.
she's
Lay out the pack
she's
to the
very
left.
sly with when she
You have
actually
11 cards.
takes the pick.
Pick up the pack.
She did take the
25
Orzhov
seconds.
Key Rune here, and we're going to make sure that she shows us what she's taken. There's a Sky Knight Legionnaire in 4th, which is potentially a signal.
Right, and there's and she looks like she's receiving that signal. There's also a second Court Street Denizen.
Yeah.
It's a card I really like.
I think
I
it's
see
great.
it going super
5
late
seconds.
still.
Draft.
She's making the move into
the card
She
to the
is.
left.
Looks like she's going to
Should
move
have
into
10
Boros.
cards.
Now, Boros, I think a lot of people think the Boros is the best deck in the format in a vacuum. I happen to be one
up
of
the
them.
pack.
Yeah.
If you could
You
just
have
tell me
25
you're going to get
seconds.
this deck from the get-go, I would take Boros. So it's certainly...
So she
ooh, and
looks-
there's a Syndic of Ties. She immediately pulls that to the front. Goes well in Boros. If she ends up sticking in Orzhov, it'll go in there,
Yeah,
obviously.
I'm fine. I'm fine with that card in Boros.
Yeah. It's actually very good in Boros. It's another
5
2-drop,
seconds.
which is something that you want a lot of in Boros. And it gives you a little bit of reach
Yeah.
in the late game.
Draft. Lay out the cards
Reach
to the
being
left.
the ability
Should
to
have
deal
9
damage
cards.
without attacking, which is Boros is really good at attacking in the early stages, but sometimes
the pack.
needs that last
You
little
have 20
punch, and a
seconds.
card like Syndic of Tides can do that. All right, let's take a look at our next pack. Looks pretty unexciting
Sylvan
for her.
Primordial.
Yeah. This is not the pack that you wanted to see at this point, but
5 seconds.
she's pulled the Sylvan Primordial to the front, and she's just going to take it.
Draft.
Doesn't really say a whole
They have
lot
8
at this
cards to
point.
your
Yeah,
left.
I mean, so we've seen more and more this like almost like 5-color
Pick up the
big
pack.
mana
You have 20
archetype
seconds.
where you have Greenside Watchers and Verdant Havens. I mean,
Yeah.
it is clearly a backup plan.
Absolutely. All right, so there's a white of Precinct 6, which is a pretty powerful
5
uncommon
seconds.
in the set, although it does require that you get some cards into your opponent's graveyard,
Best
namely
in Dimir.
creatures.
Lay out
Best
7
in
cards
Dimir.
to your left.
I've heard some pro players jokingly call it the Tarmogoyf,
Take the
Sure.
pack.
you know,
have
because it's just
15
way
seconds.
bigger than it should be. All right, she did get the Slate Street Ruffian here if she'd like it. Again, not a super exciting card,
Looking
but
at Spell Rupture, maybe
playable.
thinking about Dimir.
5 seconds.
Oh, nope, Slate Street Ruffian.
Yeah, last second audible back to
Draft.
the Ruffian.
Lay out 6 cards to your left. Take the pack. You have 10 seconds.
All right. And she finds a Gutter Skulk, which is like a better version of a Slate Street Ruffian, basically.
Draft.
It's a
Lay
2/2
out
for
5
2
cards
mana,
to your
which
left.
doesn't look too exciting, but actually is a key part of the
Pick up the
curve.
pack.
You can see the rest of her
You have
pod.
10
She's
seconds.
got Ben Stark, 2 to her left. Immediately on her left is Paul Remy.
So what we're hearing from the floor
Draft.
is that there might be
They have
another
4 cards
Orzhov
to your
player
left.
in her vicinity.
Uh-huh.
Collect the pack.
Now,
You have
in
5
her
seconds.
vicinity is an interesting. She's gonna rare draft here. Take the
Draft.
breeding pool.
the breeding pool.
Lay out 3 cards to your left.
But, you know,
Select the pack.
if you have
You have
somebody
5
who's in the
seconds.
same guild as you to your left, she gets a Beckon apparition here. That's
I
a lot
think
different
draft,
than you have
lay
if
out 2
somebody's
cards
on
to
your
your left.
right. Just
Collect the
simply
pack.
by the
You have
virtue of the
5
fact that
seconds.
there's going to be 2 packs coming from your right and only 1 from the left. So we'll see how this
Draft
next
and
pack
pass the last
treats
card.
Melissa. She was undefeated on day 1 coming into today.
You now have 30
And
seconds
she's-
to review your picks.
Now looking to keep a steady roll going right through the draft portion here. All right, we're going to get a shot of her pack here.
Well, when she opened.
All right, there's another Sky Knight Legionnaire. She has
No,
a
no,
gutter
this is
skull.
actually her 15.
Oh, this is her. She's yeah.
This is the
These are
card
all
she
cards
grabbed.
that we've
You're like,
seen
these all
before.
look. These all. She could
All right,
double up on
return your picks
anything.
to a
So
single
do you think she
face-down
looks
pile in
Orzhov at
front of
this
you.
point?
I think she's gonna just see what comes to her from.
All right,
from the
open
other
up
side.
booster B.
She's looking like
Count
she's
the cards
aggro.
face down
I
in
think she
front of
wishes
you.
she had those court
There
street
should be
denizens.
14 cards.
So pack 2 here is going to really define. Like she needs to solidify herself within the first 3 to 4 picks
She
here,
needs-
right?
I mean, she really needs just a good run of cards in a guild that's being not drafted around her.
Right.
You know what I mean?
All right,
She really
pick up
needs
the
some
pack.
cards to come through for
You
her.
have 40 seconds.
All right, so she has a Boros Charm that she's pulled to the front. There's a Martial Glory, a Zertos Swine. She finds a Daring Skyjack here that she pulls to the front as well. All right, we see a Madcap Skills and a Death's Approach. I saw a Shadow Slice in the deck as well.
So
and-
she's got to
and
make that
back.
decision right here. Is she going to be
Boros or
Bor-
Orza.
Or my guess is she's going to be Borzov in this draft. Just
Okay.
in the way this has gone. Right?
There's a Guardian of the Gateless right there. I didn't see that the first time through. That's probably the most powerful card in this pack.
5 seconds.
You like that card?
Guardian?
Yeah.
Love it.
It looks like she
Draft.
took the Daring Skyjack.
All right, so
Lay
she
out
wants to be
13
aggressive.
cards to your right.
All right, so let's see how this works out. That still doesn't quite answer the question. It does
Say
push
that.
her more into Orzhov.
No. You have pick up the pack. There are 35 seconds.
There's a Dutiful Thrall, a Syndicate Enforcer, a Basilica Guards, a Knight of Obligation, and a Cryptghast. What is that last one? A Vizkopa Confessor. So there's a lot of Orzhov cards here for her if she wants them. Cryptghast being particularly powerful in that it has Extort and also can help accelerate out huge threats.
She is looking at the Basilica Guard. Oh, Cryptghast. Basilica Guard.
I think she's like
Like
pretty
some-
happy to be an Orzhov here,
5
but like
seconds.
it's a tough one because she's got a lot of cards she'd like for her deck.
Yeah.
She went with
draft.
the Cryptghast.
She would have liked to do
Please lay out
deferred
12
that pack
cards
over
to
the
your
next
right.
3 packs.
Yes.
Collect the pack. You have 30 seconds.
All right, so she did take Cryptghast. And she sees a Sunhome Guild Mage here as probably the best one, but she's got a Cartel Aristocrat that she's pulled to the front. I think she's starting to solidify herself into Orzhov. Is that another Court Street Denizen? Yeah, there is another one as well. She doesn't seem interested in it.
No,
She wants
Five
the
seconds.
she
Cartel.
hasn't even pushed one of those that card anywhere near the front.
No.
Draft. Lay out 11 cards to your right.
So she took the Cartel Aristocrat.
She did.
So she's like, anyway, looks like she's going
Pick
to
up
be
the pack.
black-white beat down.
It does. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
25
taking the
seconds.
cheap black and white cards. Unfortunately, there's
Oh,
none.
nice.
And another Sky Knight Legionnaire. That is just, when you see that, getting past multiple Sky Knight Legionnaires, it's really, really tough to not just want to move in on Boros. But that could be a trap.
But she's
5
got
seconds.
the damage prevention spell.
Yeah,
pulled to
shielded
the front.
passage, and she's going to take it. So it looks like she's fully
Draft.
committed to Orzhov at this
Lay
point.
out 10 pack cards to your right.
Given the fact that her card quality isn't super high at this point, she doesn't
Collect
have
the
any
cards.
bombs, she doesn't
You
have
have
any
25
premium removal
seconds.
spells or anything like that. I wonder if doing what you mentioned earlier, BDM, Borzhov
Right.
might have been better.
There's another Court Street Denizen, which I think in like a black-white aggro deck is very
Fantastic, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
And there,
That's-
now she's pulled that to the front.
5 seconds.
Let's see if she takes it here. It looks like she is, and she does indeed.
Draft.
She's passing another
9 cards to
solid
the right.
Boros card. She's certainly not going to be in red.
Like, keep in mind with those Court Street Denizens, like,
Collect
she
the
can
pack, you have
force some
20
damage to
seconds.
early, and then she has those Cartel Aristocrats where she can just, like, eat her team to get through for, like, another final, like,
Yeah.
swing. What do we have here?
So she's deciding between Basilica Guards and Syndicate
5
Enforcer.
seconds.
But the Basilica Guard seems so at odds with what she wants to do right now.
It does. Like,
But-
she's going to
but she has
take
to
it.
take it,
Yeah,
Lay
it's
out
a
8
solid
cards
card.
to your
Enforcer
right.
hits harder, but it's even though it's a 3-2 for 4, it's still not a
Collect the pack.
particularly
You have
aggressive
20
card.
seconds.
I don't like Syndicate Enforcer. I don't like having that in my deck.
Yeah. Okay, so she finds a Night Watch and a Gutter Skulk here. What do you like?
Kind of like Night Watch.
Yeah, Night Watch is fine.
I really, I mean, have you ever cast Night Watch with 2 Court Street Denizens in play?
5 seconds.
No, I have not. I would participate in that.
Draft.
She did take the Night
Lay out
Watch.
7
it looks
cards
like,
to
as
your
well.
right.
Yeah.
Collect the cards. You have 15 seconds.
All right. Doesn't look like a lot for her. She's pulled a Dimir Charm to the front. There's a Bomber Core, Dimir Guild Gate.
5 seconds.
Yeah, just
Not much for her.
sure. And again, she can be
Draft.
splash. She can, depending
Lay out
on what
6
kind of guild
cards to
gauge she
your
sees,
right.
she can splash blue. She can splash red. You know, Prophetic Prism's a
Pick up the
card.
pack. You have 10 seconds.
All right, the Shadow Slice did come back, although she looks like she's not interested in it. She's pulled
5
the
seconds.
Zertos Swine to the front. Oh, and there's a Shadow Slice. No, but she
I
does hate the swine.
Draft.
Yeah,
I
Lay out
like
5
Shadow
cards
Slice
to
I want
your
the Shadow
right.
Slice in there. Like, if she doesn't really have much in the way of, or anything in the way of
Collect the
flying
pack.
right now.
No, but she could
You have
pick up
10
some
seconds.
Basilica Screechers in the next pack.
Yeah. Oh, look at this. The Basilica.
Oh, the Basilica Guards is
came
back?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Faithful Throw.
She's
Draft.
taking it. Now,
Yeah.
normally,
Lay out
That
4
feels like
cards to your
Orzhov
right.
is a little underdrafted at this
a
table.
little bit.
Collect the pack.
You know,
You have
you
5
would like to
seconds.
see those Basilica Screechers and, you know, that kind of thing. There's a Dutiful Throw.
Dutiful throw.
Draft.
Sorry.
Lay
And
out
she
3
picks up a
cards to
Dutiful
your
Throw.
right.
So, you know, cards she's going to be looking for here,
Collect the
Smite.
cards. You have
Oh,
5
yeah.
seconds.
You know, with 2 Basilica Guards, she's going to want Smite's Unexpected Results, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Draft.
Have you ever played
two cards
Purge
to
the
your right.
Profane?
I
a
haven't
pack.
played it.
You have 5 seconds.
I might have too quickly judged it as an overcosted mind rot.
Draft.
Sure.
Pass the
But
last
I
card.
have heard some people say that they actually like it in the format quite a bit.
Now 45
Even Zach,
seconds to
Zach
review
Hill
your
said
picks.
that.
I could see it in a deck where you're going to come out really low curve with a little bit of extort, and
Yep.
then you just really, your opponent, you just want to like get them and get those last couple cards in their hands that are going to.
Get those big stabilizers.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I could see that for sure. All right, she's taking a look at all of her picks here. Yeah, you know, she was going down a pretty aggressive route early. It looks
she
like
is.
it's evened out a little bit, the Basilica Guards and such.
So it's kind of interesting to me also right now. Like, you know, obviously she's 8-0. You know, you have these dreams about keeping
5 seconds left in review.
keeping the streak alive, but really she just wants to keep herself in a position to get back to standard where
All
she
right,
went
return your
5-0.
cards
That's
to
true.
circle
Right?
face
She
down
just
pile in
doesn't
front
want to
of you.
0-3 this draft, right? Someone at this table
Open up
of
your third and final
incredible players.
Yes.
Count
Is
down
gonna
14
0-3.
face
Yeah.
down cards in
And she
front of
doesn't
you.
want to be that person, right? She wants to be like she would love to come out of this 2-1, but even 1-2, you know, she can work.
She can
with
work
that.
with that, yeah.
So she's
good.
really
She
like
seems super comfortable with her standard
yeah.
deck, too.
So she's really just got to find
All right,
like
collect the cards.
the
You have
win.
40
She's like got to
seconds.
find that win.
That's right. All right, so she's looking at pack 3. This is going to be an important one. If she can add...
Oh, there's a Syndic of
There's a
Tides.
Syndic
Oh,
and a
Kingpin.
Kingpin's Pet as well. There's another Shadow Slice, which she very likely will get back based on what we've seen. Murder Investigation's not really playable. So it does look like it's going to be between Kingpin's Pet and Syndic. I like Kingpin's Pet here.
Is there a
quite bit.
temptation, though, the way this table is played out, where Orzhov has gone around late, that the Syndic of Tithes, you take that, and then the Kingpin Pet has at least a chance of coming back, where the Syndic of Tithes will almost certainly end up in a
5
Boros
seconds.
stack
Yeah,
somewhere along the way.
I think that's worth considering, but I think the decision ends up coming down to the fact that
Draft.
the Kingpin's Pet is that much better than the
They have
Syndic of
13
Ties that you
cards to
still
the
take
left.
it. It's just
Right.
not worth
and
the
also,
risk.
And also, if she keeps her eye out for that Shadow Slice,
Yeah, that thing is a great
she
inventory.
has a chance to
All right,
steal a
collect
match
the cards.
with that
You have
card.
35
Absolutely.
seconds.
That's a win stealer.
And Kingpin's Pet is a big deal when it comes to Shadow Slice.
Nervous Protector.
It is an Herbis Protector. She's also sees an Executioner Swing, which is okay in a deck like this. She does have some blockers and such. So, you know, I think I'd rather have.
Slice.
Oh, was there another one?
I think there's another one back there. Yeah.
Yeah, there is indeed. But it does look like she's going to take the Executioner Swing. She
5
really
seconds.
has almost nothing in the way of removal. And even though Executioner Swing isn't what we would call
Draft.
premium removal,
They have
it
12
does still
cards
get the
to your
job
left.
done when you need it to.
Right. It's not premium removal, but she needs to put a premium on any removal.
Exactly. Yeah. Angelic
Collect the
Edict
cards.
would be
You have
a
30
welcome
seconds.
addition here. And, of course, Smite would be great if she could pick up that. There's a Grizzly Spectacle. That is for sure what she's going to take.
Yeah,
She
by the
immediately
way,
moves into the
premium
front.
removal.
Yeah. One of the best
and
removals
also,
in the
you know,
format.
a card that's going to, like her White of District 6,
Uh-huh.
suddenly looks a lot better with a card like that in her deck.
Yeah, Grizzly
Did she end up with the
Spectacle's an
Death's
easy
Approach
pick.
also? Or did she not take
I
that?
don't think she took it.
5 seconds remaining.
Yeah, that's great because
Draft.
the last two
11
cards have
cards to your
started to
left.
fill in a gap that she desperately needed to fill
Right.
to make this deck whole.
All right, collect the cards. You have 25 seconds.
She's got a Basilica Guards and a 1,000 Lashes as the last card
Wow.
as she thumbs through. So another very solid removal spell from Melissa here, and another pretty easy pick as well.
And I think there's something interesting going on here. In
5
terms
seconds.
Of when you're at a draft table,
Yeah.
sometimes like by just, even though it's very easy to
Draft.
panic, but by like staying
10
true to
cards
what
to
you
your
set out
left.
to do,
Yeah.
you sort of, you know, you've put forces in motion in terms of how the table is
Collect
set
the
out by
cards.
your
That's
picks.
You have
right.
25 seconds.
I remember how many she was passing the Sky Knight Legionnaires. Well, you know, that's partly the reason why she gets back some of the things. Now she sees another White of Precinct 6 here and pulls that to the front. There's also a Basilica Guards though. The white in her deck is not particularly good. She's got
5
the one
seconds
Grizzly
remaining.
Spectacle, and her other removal, one of them puts a creature in the bin and the
Draft.
other one doesn't.
Lay out 9
So-
cards to your left.
Oh, you're saying the whites are not very good. I thought you were saying the white in her deck's not very good. I'm like,
Oh, no.
It seems pretty fine. It seems
Yeah.
fine to me.
The
Collect the cards. You have
WIGHT.
20
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah.
She's
All right, Basilica Screecher. There it is, the first one of those, a very potent card for Orzhov.
yeah.
Although,
I first picked that card quite a bit.
yeah, but this is where you want that Shadow Slice,
You have
right?
5 seconds.
You
I think-
slice it on there, you can start extorting the Cipher triggers, and things get out of hand
Draft.
pretty quickly.
Lay out 8 cards to
She
your
did
left.
have a Shadow Slice in those first 2 packs, though,
Yeah,
so
there
getting
were-
one
yeah, there
back
were two.
is
There were two that were
fairly
out there.
likely, yeah.
Yeah.
Collect the cards. You have 20 seconds.
All right, there's a Corpse Blockade. There is a Shadow Slice in this pack, but she pulls an Orzhov Guildgate to the front, which I think is okay as well. You know, she probably just wants one Shadow Slice, if any.
5
Does
seconds.
she really want an Orzhov Guildgate?
I think it's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I'd
Draft.
rather have the Shadow
Lay out
Slice,
7
I think,
cards
just
to your
in
left.
case-
Just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that.
Collect the cards.
I feel
You
like
have
that, I feel
15
like that card's
seconds.
pretty important. I mean, oh, there's a
Beckon Apparition, that doesn't do a whole lot. Psychic Strike. Illness
5
in
seconds.
the ranks. Yeah, there's not a lot for her here. The Apparition's fine.
yeah.
Draft.
It's an instant
Lay out
speed
6
way to
cards
tap
to
a
your
guy at
left.
the end of the turn with a Court Street Denizen.
Yeah. Yeah. Get in a little
Pick up the
extra
cards.
damage.
You have 10 seconds.
There's the Shadow Slice.
And
5
she does
seconds.
pull that to the front, so she did manage to pick that up. Did she have one from earlier as well?
Draft.
Is this her
I don't know.
first?
Lay
That's
out
her
5
that's her
cards to your
first one.
left.
All right.
I mean, I think she only wants one.
I think so too.
Collect the cards. You have 10 seconds.
I would consider playing more if I thought my deck was particularly bad. Just
I mean,
in the
I-
sense that
dude.
like it can just steal games.
Draft. Lay
She's
out
going to
4
take a
cards
scatter
to your
art. She
left.
doesn't want the second Shadow Slice.
Collect the cards.
I'm curious to
You have
see if
5
it'll
seconds.
make the main deck. She didn't seem to prioritize it, and I don't think I would either. But
Draft.
Corpse Blockade she passed.
Lay out
Yeah.
3 cards to your left.
She took over that.
which might
Collect the
start.
pack.
It might be coming
You have
out
5
of the
seconds.
sideboard versus.
Oh, she took a Smog Elemental there.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, nice. Late
Okay.
flyer.
Yeah,
Draft.
I don't like Smog Elemental.
Please hit 2 cards to the left. Collect them.
I'll pay
You have
5
5
for my
seconds.
3/3 flyers.
past the last
And a
pack.
Paranoid Delusions goes last.
Card I just don't mind having, at least in my sideboard.
All right,
Yeah,
guys.
fair enough.
I'm going to ask you to wait here for a couple of minutes while they finish up so we can get you to your construction tables.
And you guys can see that there's a very rigorous
Bacon was saved.
routine here to the Pro Tour drafts. You know, everything's on the up and up, and these players are all used to it for the most part. You see Eric Froelich on the left-hand side there, Ben Stark calmly sitting. Melissa's hard to get a read. I can't tell if she's happy or not.
Yeah.
I would be content with this deck, but not happy. She picked up that Grizzly Spectacle and the 1,000 Lashes Late,
I
which
would
were
be happy
great.
with the third pack. I don't know how content I'd be overall with the deck. I
Yeah.
feel like
Where would you, if you were drafting this,
I don't
at the
think
hotel?
I don't think she could have done anything different.
No, my question is, so 2-1, 1-2, 3-0.
You know,
What would you
this
predict?
This is a 1-2-2-1 deck in my mind.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she can 2-1 with this. I think the Shadow Slice is.
It's. I'm curious to see if she runs it. You know, it's a little. Her deck has a little bit of, like, I want to play Gutter Skulk and start attacking you early, but also a little bit of, well, I've got Basilica Guard, so I'm going to be, you know, it isn't necessarily the best curve when you go Gutter Skulk into Basilica Guards. They're doing two significantly different things.
So the Gutter Skulk might end up on the bench.
I don't know, man. Like, have you played against Boros before? You got to have somebody.
Oh,
to,
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Then again, her Basilica Guards also are going to do work against them,
Right,
so.
right. But she doesn't have that smite that you really want there.
No, that's Smite. I was, you know, being at Common, you'd
The
think that she'd
Smiteling
find
Helix
one.
in Boros.
Yeah, and she couldn't find one. I don't think she even had a chance to get one there.
No, we didn't see one unless there was one in the first pack where we missed the array of cards.
It certainly wasn't pickable over the things that she did. You know, she did end up with 2 Kingpins Pet, particularly strong common, a card I like quite a bit.
Yeah, Basilica Screecher.
Yep, she did get the Screecher, which I'm starting to like develop.
An affection for.
But I don't love it. Yeah.
It is not a very Marshall Sutcliffe type of card.
It
A
is
1/2
not.
flyer for 2.
But I have seen it before with hey everybody. Welcome back to the booth. Marshall Sutcliffe, Brian David Marshall. You know, I've seen Basilica Screecher with Cypher cards.
Yeah.
And I've been super impressed by that. Now,
Yeah.
that is something I can get behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where it really shines. And again, early on, you're able to, you know, get a little extra value out of all your spells thanks to the extort triggers on the Screecher, and you know that critical mass, right? Like
They
when
add
you're
up.
holding the ground with your Basilica Guards, and you're dinging away for 1, and you're playing something, and you're like gain 3, drain 3.
Yep. You know, it's funny. I think Basilica Screecher hits a certain player type very hard. I've seen people just like, I love just hitting them for 1 and then draining them for 1 and then hitting them for and just kind of poking away.
Yeah.
You know, there's people that just love that.
Right. I don't love that mechanic as my
neither.
play style.
Yeah.
But when I want to win 8 packs,
You'll
you
do
know,
what needs to be done.
I will screech at the Basilicas
Yeah.
very happily.
Yeah.
So we just watched Melissa DeTora draft,
Uh-huh.
and she's 8-0.
Yep.
And she really wants to come out of this 2-1.
Yes.
Yeah,
that
she really
would be
wants to come out of this
fantastic
2-1.
for her.
And until that last pack, she just did not see a lot of removal.
Yes.
So I think the guys at the desk are going to talk a little bit again about some of the guilds and things that they saw yesterday. So
Yeah, so why don't we send it back to the news desk right now. We're going to be back after that for draft action with me and BDM. We'll see you guys in a few minutes.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk. Rich Hagan and Zach Hill here with you. We had a tour of the top 8 as it could yet be. And Zach, now it's time for a tour of the multiverse. Where are we going to begin? Well, we are going to begin with what's going on in the world of the Dimir. That's what we want to know. How did the Dimir do yesterday as a guild?
Well, I think the interesting thing about Dimir is a lot of people coming into this tournament were saying, okay, like this is clearly the worst guild in draft. There are clearly a lot of issues with it, and a lot of people sort of wanted to avoid it altogether. I think the consensus is, after having watched a lot of matches on camera, yeah, like it has some serious issues. It's not as fast as the other guilds, but it also has a lot going for it. One of the big things being you can get the cards really, really late. And if you're well positioned to take advantage of it, I think it's a plenty powerful guild on its own. Now, the other thing we're seeing is on Magic Online, the Esper Control deck is one of the most popular decks in that metagame. And that's sort of carried over to this tournament too. We see a lot of Esper Control powered up by Watery Grave and the mana that makes the deck work. So, I mean, it's definitely made its presence felt both in limited and constructed.
Do you see an opportunity for players who are out there drafting on Magic Online right now to take advantage of the fact that Dimir is, if you like, underdrafted, underrepresented?
Oh, absolutely. I personally happen to draft Dimir a lot. I think the key about drafting the archetype is like you can't ignore how fast the format is. I think Sage's Road Denizen and the 1/4 Wall that gains Death Touch, both very important.
Blockade.
Corpse Blockade. Very, very important cards. You also have to take your 2-drops. Frilled Oculus, I think.
You have the
good.
1/3, which is notionally a Simic card because it becomes 3/5 with the green activated ability.
Right.
But you're happy with it as a 1/3 for 2 because
Exactly.
it just gets in the way of all those what we call grizzly bears, 2/2s for 2.
Precisely, and like maybe you have a couple of Simic Guild Gates to make it go large. Metropolis Sprite, Orzhov, or the what is it, the Basilica Screecher. Again, nominally not a Dimir card,
Right.
but it's a cheap, evasive card that goes very well with your Cipher, and it's a 2-drop. So, I mean, I think the key to drafting Dimir, think outside the box a little bit. Make sure you have a good fundamental deck with plenty of early drops. I think you can do very well.
Yeah, I think one of the big significant things watching in that draft as well, you saw cards like Shadow Slice going incredibly late, and when you look at it in isolation, you think, okay, I'm going to deal you 3 now, and pretty much always, I'm going to stick it on something and deal you another 3. That's 6 damage coming from nowhere for 5 mana, with the fact that since you've got this unblockable evasive guy, whatever it turns out to be, that's 9 damage on that one turn, 8, 9, and then if you happen to be able to untap and do it again, you're at 12, 15 damage, and yet Shadow Slice is right at the back of the pack. And the reason for that has to be the speed of the format.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of the times you just don't get to 5, and sometimes when you do get to 5, you need to be playing defense. Again, this is one of the cards that's really good with Basilica Screecher if you can get it going, because not only is it going to fly and hit them, but Extort and Cipher actually work very, very well together, because you get a free cast of a spell that you can pay for. So the way I tend to approach it is figure out how to survive first, and then just assume that whatever you're doing in the late game is going to be good enough.
Yeah, survival first route. Now, let's go around the multiverse. Let's see what's going on in the world of Channel Fireball. Wonder how they're getting on. Channel Fireball, well, they had a bit of an interesting day yesterday. We had, in total, they had 10 players coming in. 6 of them made it through to day 2. But functionally, 2 are already out. So Conley Woods, 4-4, Shuhei Nakamura, 4-4. That 4th loss is roundabout where you think, hey, you're in trouble, boys. So we think of the 4th loss as on the margin. Then you've got a couple of players at 5-3. Josh Utter-Layton, Brian Kibler are both 5-3. And they have 2 players in really good shape. And in fact, we've seen a lot of them already today. You've got Ben Stark and Eric Froelich, both at 7-1. Of the 2, who do you think are best positioned, Zach? Eric Froelich or Ben Essen? Why do you think that?
You know, I would have to say Efro, Eric Froelich. Ben Stark, obviously great player, but the reality is he is an extraordinarily limited player.
Yes.
And merely one of the world's best constructed players.
Only super good.
Only super good.
All right, fair enough.
But we've only got, we've got 3 rounds of limited, 5 rounds of constructed. I think Efro is kind of a little bit more well-rounded. They're both obviously extraordinary players, but Efro's been looking for a breakout tournament for a while.
Sure, yeah, I know he's got a couple of Pro Tour top 8s. He was in the top 8 of Worlds at Chiba in 2010, and actually pretty heartbreaking loss in that quarterfinal. Had he won his quarterfinal, he would have been platinum for the 2011 season.
Right.
So we concentrate on the winners here, but sometimes you see the losers, and it's pretty devastating. You know, they play for keeps, these people, and that was a tough loss for Eric, but he's right back in the fray now. So we go back round the multiverse. This time we're going to see what's going on in the rather aggressive world of Gruul. So Zach, yesterday, constructed, limited, what was going on with the Gruul?
Well, I think one of the things that you can't ignore about this tournament is the force that Tomohiro Saito, who's actually not playing, has exerted on the environment.
So this is the former Japanese Player of the Year?
Yes, exactly. He posted a deck that was this extraordinarily aggressive Gruul deck. I played, almost mono red, but it played Rancor and Flinnof Boar. It's just sort of to capitalize on the speed of the deck. That's had an enormous influence. Team Panic today playing a very similar deck to that. So it's sort of managed to define a lot of the standard environment by being just the baseline, very fast deck. We've also seen Gruul gets a Planeswalker in this set, Domri Raid, and it's made its presence known. A great weapon against a lot of the Esper decks that we're seeing. So I think that on top of just being one of the more popular limited guilds, I know Reed Duke of Team Star City had one of the highest win percentages in their testing, loved to draft just kind of slower, bigger Gruul decks.
All right, so give me a little piece of advice for people, again, just starting out with their Gatecrash drafting journey.
Right.
Where do you see Blood Rush sitting? How much is Blood Rush a pump mechanic? How much is it the threat of a pump mechanic? And how much of it is just guys? Where do you see the balance?
That's a really good question, Rich. I mean, I really think the threat of the pump mechanic is where a lot of the value in the cards lie. Just because you never get any good blocks against a Gruul player, and because of that, you always have to leave open removal instead of developing your board, because you might just get hit by a Scorch Walker and die. And so I think the fact that you always have to play around Blood Rush, but the person with the Blood Rush cards doesn't always have to play them, means that Gruul just kind of gets to be in the driver's seat a lot of the time. And there's nothing wrong with a turn 3 Slaughterhorn. 3-2 for 3, keep applying pressure. And you even get into this moment where it's I've got 2 Slaughterhorns in my hand, so I play as though I have one, and then my opponent doesn't block and I cast it. And they're like, oh, he doesn't have a Slaughterhorn anymore.
Sure.
And then you just blow them out next turn.
All right, so Blood Rush pretty much a major success in Limited. Happy with that. Let's go around the multiverse again. This time, don't panic. And what is Panic? Well, Panic is the second Channel Fireball team, if you like, the young guns. And the way they worked out, they had 11 players on their team. 5 of them made it through. There they are. 5 of them made it through to day 2, but 2 are already gone with 4 losses. 2 have no losses to give, so they're at 5 and 3, needing to just win all the way through to possibly the last round, where they might be able to haggle their way into the top 8. And only 1 player on Panic has a loss to give, and even that is only one, 6 and 2, Shahar Shenhar. But he is a terrifically impressive young man.
Oh yeah, and we've had him in for some deck techs before. Really, really knowledgeable about the game. Very tight player. Very technically excellent, and extremely young. I mean, I think he has a
19 now?
future in this game. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's somebody you never want to sit down across from.
2 Grand Prix wins already, and it would not surprise me at all if he makes an excellent run today, because it's not just his play skill, he has such a terrific attitude. You had the focus on what you're doing right now, sort of, written on your knuckles. He kind of has that just there.
Yeah.
And he's a tremendously impressive player.
Now, like we talked about, these guys are on, I mean, it's interesting the attitude and kind of the ethos these guys have. A lot of them are on the Saito Gruul deck that we talked about right now. And it's kind of like, brash and brazen and fast and aggressive. And I feel like that sort of describes this team as a whole. Like, you've got a lot of really young guys. You've got a lot of raw talent. You've got, a lot of people that are not afraid to kind of be bold and do what it takes to succeed.
Yeah,
I mean, we're seeing that.
You've got Michael Hetry, you've got Rookie of the Year, Matthias Hunt, Jacob Wilson, Jesse Hampton's on that squad. Yeah, like you say, they're kind of, think of them almost like as the development league for Channel Fireball. I'm sure they'll love me for that later. So that's Team Panic. Let's move on, and this time, it's time for Boros. And one of my favorite guilds, but one I've been watching really carefully this weekend, because when a deck's really aggressive, and everyone knows that's what a deck is, sometimes it only exists to be the baseline against which good decks base themselves. And sometimes you get to run them over even though you know it's coming. And I want to know from you, Zach, in particular in Limited, how did Boros fare yesterday?
I mean, Boros, very successful overall. I think you were talking about how it sort of is the baseline, but I don't think it's just the baseline.
Okay.
I think Boros is an extremely powerful deck. I think it has a lot of play to it. Even when your Boros deck doesn't quite come together, I think sometimes you can sneak wins in with like a madcap skills at the right time. But I think Boros definitely was the deck that when people came into the format, very quickly, within 2 or 3 drafts, they realized, like, okay, if we don't start doing things in the early game, the Boros deck is going to absolutely run us over. So the thing that's interesting, though, is that it didn't peter out. It wasn't as though it's like, okay, we figured out how to deal with it, it's not winning anymore. I think it's got a lot of staying power as an archetype.
Okay, what is true, though, in Limited, is that you saw plenty of 0-3 Boros decks, because at those tables you could clearly see where, for example, you want lots of 2-drops in Boros. Right. But I think we can both agree that Bomber Core, the 1/2 for 2 that has this huge bomb of 1 damage when it gets Battalion, is quite low on the list of the 2-drops. And you could see all these 0-3s where they had their Boros deck, and yes, they had 6, 7, 8 2-drops. But 3 of them were Bomber Core, there were no Daring Skyjacks, there were no Watchek Halberdiers, because they'd gone elsewhere at the table, and Boros had been overdrafted, kind of to compensate for the Dimir being underdrafted, which is what we talked about earlier.
Exactly, and I think that is one of the traps of Boros, is that there's so many cards that are just obviously very aggressively costed and powerful, that it's easy to interpret those as just kind of stronger signals to go into the guild.
Look at this great card that's still here.
Right, exactly.
It's like, well, of course it's still here, because they picked 3 better ones before you.
Precisely. And I think a lot of people forget that Boros doesn't have a bad top end either. You know, you've got like a common 4/4 vigilance for 5. The card does work, especially in a format as small, or with creatures as small as this one.
Yeah, Towering Thunderfist is very definitely a game changer at the back end when you think you may have run out of steam. Exactly. And then, of course, lots of very powerful rares up at the top end as well. So let's move on. At this time, we're going to take you to another team, and then we're going to take you to the world of Star City Games. What's going on in their multiverse? Well, they had the biggest team of the 5 we're featuring this morning. 14 players came in. 10 of them made it through to day 2. That sounds pretty good. Of the 10, though, 2 are already out of the running at 4 and 4, essentially. Then 4 of them have no losses to give at 5 and 3. And the best of the bunch, well, they're only 6 and 2, so they don't have any 7-1s, don't have any 8-0s. There's only one 8-0, of course. The 6-2s, Owen Turtenwald, who lost to Eric Froelich in the last round. You got Paul Rietzel, who's on the comeback trail. Really interested to see what he does today. Tom Martell, and Andrew Cuneo, a bit of old school. You were probably 6 when he was last doing really, really well at Magic. So what do you make of the SCG team performance?
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on there. The first thing to talk about is an incredibly innovative standard deck that they brought to the table.
All right.
It's basically a black, red, white humans deck with a lot of sacrifice outlets to go well with Zealous Conscripts, and just because they're good cards. So you got Falkenroth Aristocrat, Cartel Aristocrat. Of course, the deck's called the Aristocrats.
Sure.
And it's very appropriate that it comes right after the Boros Guild, because their deck features 4 copies of the card that in many ways has defined the landscape of Standard, and that's Boros Reckoner.
I thought you were going to say Boros Elite there for a minute, but no. Boros Reckoner, again, hybrid mana. It's a 3/3 for 3. Can get first strike, but that's not the key to the card deck.
Right. There's with Boros Reckoner, it's very, very good in the field, full of red decks, full of aggressive decks. It's very hard to attack into. There's also a lot of kind of adorable combos that are going on with it, whether adorable, precious. You see Blasphemous Act out of Star City's sideboard. You see, Funeral Pyre?
Harvest Pyre.
Harvest Pyre. That you can suddenly deal 20 damage out of nowhere.
Yep, just fill your graveyard and then just go Harvest Pyre my own Boros Reckoner. You?
Right, exactly. And then we saw David Scharfman come in yesterday and do a deck tech.
Right.
Turns out if you cast Boros Charm and Azorius Charm to make your Reckoner indestructible and have lifelink, if it takes damage, you gain infinite life. Kind of a weird combo, but point being, Boros Reckoner, in addition to being a good card that you just cast, is a great card to do tricky things with, and we see some of that out of Team Star City's deck.
Okay, so 4 of those sort of still in reasonable contention, and of course, things change. In the morning, you draft well at 6 and 2, suddenly you're 9 and 2, then you're right in the hunt for the top 8. So, that's Star City. Let's move. We used to call those Star City Black, and Black is half of our next guild. It's time to take a look at the Orzhov. So, what's going on with Orzhov? We've just seen Melissa draft an Orzhov deck. What did you make of her deck this morning, and how did Orzhov sit yesterday?
Well, I think her deck is quite excellent, and I think Orzhov in general, it has sort of the consensus most powerful keyword mechanic in Extort. Extort, not really a mechanic that looks all that impressive at first glance. It's kind of tricky to play. It's like, okay, do I hold my spells? Do I play them with Extort? But it turns out that them losing 1 life and you gaining 1 life 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times over the course of the game, totally alters the pace of combat and is just extremely powerful. So I think Orzhov gets better the more and more people play with it.
Part of the thing with Extort also is you look at cards, let's talk about a couple of really simple cards.
Yeah.
Syndic of Tides, Kingpin's Pet. We saw
Right.
Melissa looking at both of those repeatedly through the draft. The thing is, if they didn't have Extort, lots of people would play them in their limited
exactly.
decks. A 2/2 for 2, 1 and a white, 2/2, and 1 white-black, admittedly a little awkward on the casting cost, a 2/2 flyer for 3. These are fine cards before you put this amazing keyword on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, limited formats, for as long as I can remember, Windrake has been good. Most of the time, Grizzly Bear or Runeclaw Bear or Glory Seeker,
Perfectly acceptable.
perfectly fine, right? And so then you have this ability that not only is just sort of powerful in the abstract, but it solves a lot of the problems that the decks you're playing it have. If you're like a Syndic of Tides in a Boros deck, that card can kind of give you the extra few damage you need to end the game. And of course in Orzhov, which is what we're talking about, it can be your entire game plan. I've seen Orzhov decks drain 10 or 11 points of life over the course of a game. That's enough to just be what you're doing right there.
Did Orzhov fare well in Constructed, or are we still waiting to see what people do? It feels to me in a way like Orzhov was lots of whisperings of Obzedat Ghost Council going to be everywhere, and maybe there were all sorts of tricky decks and that kind of perhaps have been left in people's rucksacks this weekend as not quite being ready for the Pro Tour. And maybe over the next couple of weeks, we've got Quebec City next week, another standard Grand Prix you'll be able to see here on Daily MTG. I wonder whether we're going to see Orzhov developing and the Pro Tour has come just a little early for it.
I think that's definitely true. I think, these Pro Tours happen very soon after the release of a set. It's hard to kind of get the combination right or figure out exactly what you want. That said, we have seen a lot of the Esper control decks play Obzedat as a way to actually end games, because trying to mill your opponent out with just Jason, Nephalia, Drownyard sometimes is a little bit of an ambitious plan. We've also seen not really an Orzhov card in principle, I guess, but Lingering Souls, one of the format's defining cards, so good it was banned in Innistrad block constructed,
Right.
making a bit of a resurgence not only in those Esper decks, but in the Team Star City deck, which again is playing, I think, a card that we're going to see a lot more of as Standard evolves, and that's Orzhov Charm.
Right.
One of the few cards that straight up just kills any creature you want it to.
Yeah.
So I think Orzhov is a guild that started out well in Limited, and people know how good it is. In Constructed, I definitely think it's on the rise.
All right, let's go around the multiverse again. This time it is to the world of TCGplayer.com. Now, I'm not going to give too much away here. They're doing quite well.
Yeah.
8 of the 9 of them made it through. This is this sort of pan-European team and indeed transatlantic. You've got Raphael Levy, he was 6-2. Jeremy Desarnier, France 5-3. Timothée Simoneau, undefeated at 7-0-1. Stanislav Sivka, 5-2-1. He's still trying to keep his dream alive of back-to-back Pro Tour titles. You've got Yaklowski, he's functionally out, but he is at 4-4. Robert Yurkovich, 6-1-1. Even Flock, 4-4, snuck into day 2. And of course, the headline act on the TCG player squad. It's Melissa DeTora running the tables yesterday at 8-0. And she has 3 full losses to give.
Exactly. Rich, I'm really excited to see this team come together and kind of be an institution that you can talk about. You have so many of these players, whether it's Levy, Melissa, who's been around for a long time putting up solid results, people like Robert Yurkovich, Stanislav Sivka, the previous Pro Tour champion, players that everyone knows are some of the best players in the world, but don't quite have the sort of gravity of the people on Channel Fireball or Star City, just in terms of how high profile they are. I think one of the reasons that is, it's just easy to talk about what Channel Fireball is doing, what Team Star City is doing. I think now that this group of people is sort of solidified into a rock solid team that has clearly put up a dominant performance today,
yes,
we're going to see really, I think, the rise of a third pillar of the pro Magic community.
And it's certainly done Raphael Levy no harm. The Hall of Famer, he's closing in on 1,000 Pro Tour matches. Just outstanding. I can tell you that we're pretty much getting ready to go here, but we've got one more guild to just take a look at. Let's take a look at Simic. And how did they fare? Blue and green, Zach.
I think Simic, a great guild in Limited. It's able to take advantage of Pit Fight, which is a common it's in red and green hybrid, which is you could play it in a lot of decks, but it's kind of bad in Boros. Really good in Simic because the evolved mechanic. Straight up cards. I mean, Zvi Malshowitz on Star City for a long time was saying, I'm only playing Simic. I'm going to force it. I'm going to do it whenever I can. Because you get Shamble Shark, very easy, a 4/3 creature for 2 mana by doing very little work. Same with Cloudfin Raptor. So I think the Simic guild has done a lot of work in Limited, something people like to be in. And then of course, Melissa DeTora's 8/0 deck made possible by cards like Breeding Pool that just make the mana work and allow you to play all these powerful cards.
I'm going to call out to Magic writers around the internet. Please write some articles about Simic and how to draft Simic. Because Simic seems to me to have this weird sort of invisible keyword, which is kind of the creatures come into play pacified. They can't attack and they can't block to start with, because you have to wait until they get a bit bigger before they can really start tagging. I know Croconura can trade with a 1/3, can get in the way of a 2/2. But for the most part, you want to get a counter on, then it starts, yep, I'm a 2/4 now, I'm here. And we talked about how Boros is so quick. A lot of the time you see players casting, when Simic is losing, they are casting their spells and they can't afford that turn in which they can turn them on and get them to a power and toughness that is relevant to the game. And instead they're going, okay, I'll make my 0/1 flyer that will block your 4/4. Yeah, I'm dying.
Sure.
And so there has to, I'm sure there is a secret to Simic, and I certainly don't know it yet. What is it, Zach? Help!
I think the play is, I think Rich is being humble right now, but I think the play is to really sequence how you're planning on playing out the entire game when you look at your opening hand.
All right.
It's easy to think of a +1/+1 counter. It's kind of like, oh, it's a little counter, it's a bead on a card, who cares? But like a 2-mana 3/2 is, a second to fourth pick quality card. A 2-mana 2/1, a Coral Merfolk, you may not play it. A 2-mana 4/3 is bananas, right? So it's you've got to appreciate the value of that additional +1/+1 counter, and that means when you're looking at your hand, you need to think about, okay, if I cast this here and this the turn after, then this other card is a 2/4. So will that let me evolve these other creatures? If the answer is yes, play it in that order. If the answer is no, okay, maybe you need to play a 4/1 instead of a 2/4 in order to evolve most of your creatures. And then that's why cards like Adaptive Snapjaw that evolve everything on your board.
And that's Brian David Marshall's favorite card in the whole set.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he loves, well, he's a Simic guy.
He's a Simic
obviously.
guy, you've seen the shirt.
As you say, it evolves everything.
But and that's why when you're drafting your deck, you have to think about the power and toughnesses that are in your pool and pick up ones that you don't have so you can make sure whenever you cast a creature, you're managing to evolve something.
We have one more team to look at, but before we do, just want to say hi to Samuel. Samuel's 6, and he's a bit impatient, like a lot of you, for the live action to start. I can tell you that off camera, the players have finished building, they're handing their deck lists in, so Samuel and all of you out there waiting for round 9, it's coming your way, probably in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So stay with us, Sam, and thanks for being here. One of our younger MTG fans, just 6. And if you're not sure how to draft Simic, don't worry, someone will come and help. So, back we go to Team Mana Deprived. So this is the home team, essentially, representing Canada and some other countries as well. This is quite an interesting team in that you've got most of the Canadians, but you also have Miguel Gatica from Costa Rica, and you also have World Magic Cup champion Su Ching Kuo and Hao Shan Huang from Chinese Taipei. So they're in that mix. So very much one of those teams that you think, how on earth did that end up as a team? And the answer is, you end up in the same room at a Pro Tour, you hang out, you draft, you go for a meal, you find you like each other, you find you know enough of each other's language to just, speak the global language of Magic, and then you go, why don't we just test together? And this has been working really well. Of the 9 of them, 7 made day 2. That's great, 7 of 9 into day 2, well done. However, from there the story gets a little less exciting. 5 of them are thoroughly done at 4/4. 1 of them, and that's Su Ching Kuo, is 5/3. So he has to run his draft table, run 4 rounds of standard, then see what happens in the last round. So only 1 of them is in pretty good shape. and that's John Stern at 6-2. So, well done for so many making it through. But whether we're going to see a Canadian winner or a team mana-deprived winner, I think that's much more of a stretch, Zach.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I mean, I feel like a lot of these guys, the top 8ing is going to be hard. On the other hand, putting up good performances is going to be pretty easy. And it's, the way we spin this coverage, we always talk about who's top 8ing. It's important to remember, if you make the top 75 of this tournament, you're getting at least $1,000.
Yeah.
That's nothing to sneeze at,
It
right?
certainly is not.
So, I mean, I think the team is poised to put up a good showing as a whole. You're talking about Suchin Kuo. It kind of reminds me of when I was playing on the Pro Tour around like 2006, 2009.
Yep.
I tested with a bunch of Belgians.
That's right, and how did that occur? And it's like through Ben Stark, and you've got Moraine Liebert and Vincent Lemoine, Fried Mulders, Jan Dwaz, all those guys.
Right. And you just show up at enough at events and you play against each other and with each other enough, you're like, okay, we should work together because you're awesome and I like the way you think about Magic. So I really like looking at Team Mana Deprived and kind of how international it is. It sort of reminds me of one of the amazing things about Magic and its ability to bring so many people together.
Zach mentioned hard cash, and of course we've got up to $40,000 to the winner. But I want to talk about hard points, because this, it turns out, is only the second Pro Tour of the season.
Right.
The first one was at Pro Tour Return to Ravnica in Seattle. And so there have been players trying to get to gold, trying to get to platinum, who've been wading through the Grand Prix circuit on the back of just one massive points payday opportunity, which was Pro Tour RTR. This is the second. So for players who are 4-4, 5-3 coming in today, if you're 4-4 and you go 6-2, that's going to put you kind of maybe as high as, top 50, somewhere around there. And that's proper points towards your total of trying to get to gold, trying to get to platinum. So the storylines are everywhere here on day 2. But of course, we are going to focus at the top of the standings. Let's take a look at the top of the standings as things stand. Here is the day 2 scoreboard. Here we go. Melissa DeTora, 8-0. Timothée Simoneau from France, 7-0-1, the 2 undefeated players. Then the 7-1s, Paul Rini of Chinese Taipei, Becerra, Eric Froelich from the United States with teammate Ben Stark at 7-1. Great stuff, Don van Ravensvaai from the Netherlands, 7-1 after that killer draft pod in the morning. And then Isaac Egan from Australia. Over to the second side, we see Gianluca Spanu, the lead Italian 7-1. Jerry Thompson, quietly in there. Part of Channel Fireball, of course, doing terrifically. We've been testing with them. Loic Lebron from France, 6-1-1. The Slovak Republics, Robert Jerkovic. Matteo Orsini-Jones leads the 6-2s. There are lots of 6-2s, of course, but we can't fit them all into just one screen. Wouldn't all fit on your phone at home. Robbie Bolick, 6-2. Alex Gerlach, 6-2. He's had a very good performance. And Joe Larson, probably disappointed to be at 6-2 after a 6-0 start. So who do you pick out there, Zach?
I think the names that stand out to me, actually the one name that stands out to me the most is Jerry Thompson. Jerry, for a long time, has been one of the premier deck designers in the game, really, really good at working in established formats, but never really had breakout success on the Pro Tour. Actually, like a really disappointing day 2 conversion rate, despite being, one of the most feared players to ever sit down across from you at a Grand Prix or, give a deck to a friend of his at a PTQ to casually crush everyone. I think Jerry's finally gotten the rhythm of how to succeed at the Pro Tour level, how to walk into sort of unexplored formats, and is really working with a great team. So I actually think Jerry is poised for a breakout performance this event.
I will pick out from that list. See, I had Joel Larson quite early, but I feel bad about those 2 losses at the back end. He's very resilient, though.
Right.
He's very, very good. I'll stick with Joel Larson as a quiet top 8. I think you were keener on Melissa's deck than the booth were. Let's see how Melissa's deck turns out. I can tell you that the feature match is for round 9. Where else could we start than inevitably? It is Melissa DeTora against Timothée Simoneau. You've got Raf Levy against Shahar Shenhar. Paul Ritzel faces Patrick Cox. And Grgo Petric Maritic of Croatia is up against Jeremy Ross-Latour. Samuel, you get your wish, my friend. It's time for round 9 of Pro Tour Gatecrash 2013.